mind looks like when it's open to you in front of you. And most people don't ever sit down and really focus too much on it, but it kind of starts with a square, if you want to try to follow along with me here. And I imagine that square is going right across this base of the palm. Now the first thing, once I've got that square in place, is I want to make a little bit of a curved shape on the top. That's because when I look at where the fingers come out, to me it creates a sort of a curved line. And I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get to the fingers. You're always trying to measure the length of, for me, let's go for this, what looks to be the longest finger, or at least it's the finger that extends the furthest from the hand, because it sort of begins a little higher up there. And you try to figure out what that distance is. When I look at it, it sort of measures a little bit to like that box that I was talking about, the initial box. So I figure out what that is, and I go up here, maybe a little make a little mark up here, and that shows me how long that finger should be. Of course, you've got to be very careful when you draw just that one finger, because it conveys something that maybe I should not be conveying in a public place. But it is indeed the easiest thing to start with, and I will quickly move on to drawing the other fingers so that it looks like a peace sign. That's much more socially acceptable. But notice how the pointing finger is like down one notch, right? And I know I didn't really focus on this till I was like in college, I think, these proportions between the fingers. Of course, you want to make sure that this second line, I probably should have said something about that, is coming pretty close to the midway point between your two sides of the box, right? Because you're dividing this into 4 fingers. So one interesting thing is that this third finger, the ring finger, is almost the same length as that pointer finger. So you can kind of just go ahead and make those the same. More or less the exact same length and width. And the pinky, we call the little finger, is indeed the little finger. When you look at it, it is considerably shorter. And again, it's because of this curving thing, it's dropping down, it's not even getting its start until much lower on the hand. So what happens is you get these slightly dropped proportions here, but you get a very drastically dropped pinky. And it is also narrower, you know, the width from side to side is observably smaller than the other fingers, although not, you know, you don't want to get too carried away. So I would say at least once you should challenge yourself to do, you know, based on your own hand, to get these proportions down, and then this is going to help you. You divide each one of them into 3, people were saying, is it phalange? Is that, some people were telling me that that's the correct, I kept saying digits or something like that, but I think the whole finger is a digit, right? So these little subsections, right? Each one of them divide into 3, roughly all the same size. But what often happens in illustration is that artists love to accentuate the very final digit up here, or digit, I'm doing it again, phalange or whatever it is. Do I really have to know the words for these things? You will often see the artists accentuating or exaggerating, defining those last parts of the hand, just to help us sort of see them and recognize them for what they are. Gives a little more form. Now watch how it drops down here, and of course there's this sort of mass of wrinkles down here. As we come back down, I would say about halfway down that first box that we drew. And if you want to, I wouldn't get too carried away with it, but you could go ahead and put some of these wrinkles in. Drawing the thumb, and I don't have a whole lot of space left here because of the sleeve that I drew in here, but the thumb, unlike the fingers, breaks into kind of 2 parts. And so what I'm going to do here is draw a slight a slight diagonal line here that's sort of the base of the thumb. And from here is where the real thumb itself is going to extend, and it tends to sort of curve off. Now, as for the actual length of the thumb, I think it's fairly comparable to the pinky, so you can kind of use that as a measurement device. But again, artists, I find, love to accentuate this second half of the thumb, even more than it is defined in real life. You will see this get a lot of emphasis. But there is, at least on my thumb, quite an observable curvature to that outside line there. And then I didn't really notice this so much until I started observing the human hand. There's that, you know, at the base of the thumb, there's that quite big gap there. Over here, only a very slight gap as you come down to the wrist. So down here on this side of the hand, I'm going to create just a little indentation before we start heading down into the wrist area. But over here, and you know, everyone's wrists are kind of different, but this here, it's much more observable indentation. And you know, if you want to, you can get into all of the like palm reading, lifeline, timeline, line lines that go across there. What I tend to see artists do is they want to indicate a little bit of this base of the thumb. Again, I should know what this is by now. Somebody said that there's a certain word for that, the base of that part of the palm that extends into the thumb. This whole area down here, and I'm older than you guys are, so I probably have more wrinkles than you do, but it gets quite defined over time, this base of the... I see most artists want to give some indication of this sort of meaty area down here, and then you may get one line going across here, sort of hollowing out that inner part of the palm. But you can kind of go down a rabbit hole of detail in trying to give every single last detail of the human hand. But I would say do this at least once. Do studies like this so that you know the basic length of the fingers and how they relate to the hand. And that will serve you well. But again, don't feel that you need to memorize every possible version of what the hand looks like. In fact, in my book, Mastering Manga, and here I feel like I'm a salesman in Mastering Manga, I decided to create a page that showed 50 different ways of drawing the human hand. Because, again, I feel it's impossible to completely commit all of this information to memory. You need a kind of cheat sheet or a photo reference, or, you know, again, looking at your hand, sometimes you have to look at it in the mirror to see what you're trying to see. All the different ways the hand looks from different angles and doing different things. So, thank you for that request. I will have another, maybe another quick look around the room to give people little bits of advice.